Hey everybody, I'm John Rourke, Editor-in-Chief of Phoenix Home and Garden Magazine, and we are here today with 2024 Phoenix Home and Garden Masters of the Southwest Award-winning architect C.P. Drewett. Our current cover, which is the February-March issue, Masters of the Southwest, one of your projects is on the cover. So tell us about that project.
Well, you're starting right out of the chute to get me to cry. So that's a very important project for me in my career, but that was a speculative house in Estancia that I designed, but at the moment, my father had recently taken ill, but it's a tribute to my father and his life. So it's in the spirit of Marine Corps aviation.
Which is incredible, and it has that incredible, crazy cantilevered roof over the pool.
42 feet.
Which defies physics and logic.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And so the name of that project is?
We call it the Crusader.
Okay, and you name your projects frequently,
yeah,
correct?
Yeah, that one's the Crusader. My dad primarily flew the F-8. He was a carrier pilot, and the F-8 was known as the Crusader.
Okay.
And on the carrier, the wings would fold up and lay back. And if you know the plane and you look at the design, look at the house, I mean, it's got the DNA.
You grew up all over the place.
Yes.
You were kind of a military kid, so you didn't stay in a long time in any given place. Do you think that had an effect on architecture for you? Being exposed to a bunch of different styles and locations?
I definitely do. Because we lived in so many different climates. Mm-hmm. I remember in my formative years paying attention to what the climate would do to buildings, and I don't know that I perceived all the details necessarily, but
sure,
at an early age I was attracted to that and paying attention to it.
And there's a great quote in your interview that I think your dad said that he would pick the worst house in the best neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you guys would just redo them?
Like I said, we were the original fix and flippers. So many times I remember pulling up in front of a house and hearing my mom whimper because they were pretty unsightly at times. But when we were done, they were great.
That's fantastic. And so you learned the trades from the ground up.
Yeah, from block work to drywall. We spent, actually my dad and I spent a ton of time woodworking. So that was mostly what he and I did together.
Okay.
And I still love spending time in a shop when I have it, but that's few and far between, but I do enjoy it. Yeah.
So that has to be a great foundation for you, learning all those different trades.
It was, especially again, millwork, because there's so many options in making connections beautiful. Mm-hmm. And that was something that we did when I was a kid, and we talk about it, and just the art and joinery. If you look at furniture and you look at all the different techniques, it's pretty remarkable, and I think that can descend itself into architecture.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned in your interview is collaboration, and that's a big deal for you. Talk about that a little bit.
I try not to be overly territorial, and because in the design world, everything overlaps. Mm-hmm. And if you're territorial, I feel like you can limit the success of a project, where as an architect, I feel like we're creating a canvas for the other folks that we're working with. And all the projects are different, but I think generally speaking, we're sort of leading the front end of it, and then laying the framework for landscape architecture and interior architecture and so forth.
Now, what's the best way, and I never like to pigeonhole an architect, but if you were to describe your work, if I was to describe your work, many of the homes that I've been in that you have designed are very modernist, very contemporary, huge windows, mm-hmm. vast rooms, high ceilings, mm-hmm. natural materials, but that's not all you do.
It's not. It's a good portion of what we do, okay. The larger percentage, but really what we do is respond to our clients, mm-hmm. and for the moment, our clients that are coming in and seeking us for our design leadership are looking for modernist type work, but I mean, I've worked with every style from French country to farmhouse to you name it.
So do you think, is that contemporary modernist style more prevalent here in the Southwest, just given our climate? Or is that not, is that a generalization?
I would say that our climate and topography welcomes modernism. And I think this climate is, I think it's more adaptive to allow lots of different styles where certain climates and certain, weather conditions or climate conditions add a bit more specificity on what you can do with the architecture.
So if you look at a house that you designed 20 years ago, would the average eye see that, oh, wow, that's quite a difference from today? Or would they say, that looks like a CP?
Well, I hope there's a link.
Right.
But I feel like I've gained a higher awareness on how materials meet. I learn every day.
Sure.
So everything I learn, I try to apply. And I'm always trying to push. I will say there was a period in my career where we did a house in Estancia that was, it did real well for us in the in the award circuit, and it got a lot of press. And I had people walk in with that magazine and say, I want one of these. And when that happens, sometimes we never do like rinse and repeat, but there was maybe adaptive nature of that. Everything was maybe a derivative, but I'm really trying to push now, and I feel really blessed where I am. Most of our clients come in, they tell us what they want, maybe from a room inventory, and a lot of them just they want me to be able to express myself.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm able to push it, and I hope we're kind of opening ourselves up to new style expressions or new architectural expressions. But as far as adapting, I feel like that's kind of been the greatest adaptation is gaining more and more confidence from our clients.
Okay, fantastic. And one of the things, we had dinner together a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that you mentioned that I thought was so interesting was that Art Deco is making a comeback. Explain that.
Well, I've said that for a while, and everyone initially looked at me like I had 6 heads, but if you look in any and all fashion design, and like deco's here, patterns are here, and it's sort of something that bounces out of a purely modernist period, because after the recession, strip down, simplify life, and
right.
This true modernist sort of expression came from that. And now we're past that, and I think Art Deco was a bit of a celebration of life. So I think it's kind of this jubilant time of kind of rebirth, or I don't know. I just think it's something that's natural in the wake of like that shrinking and subtracting nature of like a true modernist.
That's so interesting, and I know I've talked to interior designers who, like, when the recession happened and people scaled back and people were cutting corners and people were afraid, I've heard, of color at that point. And so interiors were much more muted, and then once we got through that, color started creeping back in. So it's kind of a corollary. People, it's almost like people feel safe, and so they kind of take chances.
Yeah, and they can express themselves. And
okay, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And then you guys recently did a coffee table book on one of your projects.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
The coffee table book or the project?
Tell us about the project that created the coffee table.
So the project as a whole, it's quite expansive. It's north of Scottsdale, and it's on a nice sized piece of property. And the project, while it's expansive, one of the things that I try to do is really limit the material palette. So there's Firewall, which is a version of rammed earth. There's metal fascia. There's steel windows. There's dug fir ceilings and a little bit of stucco. That's it on the whole project. So it's really limiting in that regard. But I wanted to create a really tight palette and then re-express it and reinvent it through it. But that's the kind of a quickie on that. And then as far as the book itself, that was quite a labor.
I can imagine.
And I mean, it took a village.
Right.
And Desert Star did an amazing job memorializing, archiving the process. And then Werner on his photography, David, his work on the interior was phenomenal. But that project made us all better.
Yeah.
And it made us all lift to greater and new heights.
That's it. So it's worthy of a book. Definitely, documentation in a book.
Yeah, and I mean, that was my first journey into publishing something like that, and I have a newfound respect for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It also takes a village to do well.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what's next for you? What are you working on now?
Well, we have a whole host of exciting new residential projects, and then what's new is I'm really trying to get more and more involved with the development side and a bit of a larger canvas, and I've been afforded the opportunity to work on some things at more of a community level and looking at just larger like clubhouses, community fabric. I find it really interesting, and it feels fresh and new.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's very exciting.
That is exciting. New challenges and a new direction.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Once again, CP Drewett, architect Drewett Works, one of our 2024 Masters of the Southwest. This issue is on newsstands right now. Pick it up and get to know CP, get to know the other honorees, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking your time today.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.